Welcome to Conversations. In one way, this is going to be a neat show. This is our last show, hopefully, with old cameras. I was looking at some of our shows in the past, and we had a great deep black, and hopefully that deep black will be back next week. My guest today came to my ways, kind of a long story, but I'll make it real short. I was doing a conference for gay nonprofit groups to interact with nonprofit groups whose agendas sort of overlap, either because they had a lot of gay people who worked there or whatever. And I was lucky enough to get 3 young people from the high school who were part of the Gay Straight Alliance. And it was a great thing when I said something about them coming and sharing, and one of them said, well, nobody's ever asked before, and I felt that was something I remember with great fondness. And so our guest today is Michael Parrish, who is definitely a girl.
Yes.
I put you on my new website, and somebody emailed me that I got it all wrong, and I said, no, I got it right. That's a silly question to start with. Is that your given name?
It is my given name. My parents wanted to choose a name that wasn't from either side of the family, either my mother's or my father's, so that nobody would get jealous. And so they picked something that had never been on either side.
Yeah, but Hepzibah or something, I think they could have gone. Oh my God. Anyway, that's a silly question. When we were doing our sound test just a minute ago, you were rattling off, doing an introduction, and rather impressed me with all the things that you're involved in. So I'm going to let you do that again. So if you look in that camera, and I think it's that camera, yeah, and do your introduction all over.
Okay. I'm Michael Parrish, and I'm a junior at Hellgate High School here in town, and I'm a member of the Gay Straight Alliance at Hellgate. I also serve on the board of the National Coalition Building Institute's chapter here in Missoula and the board of the Montana Youth Action Network. I work at the Bureau of Business and Economic Research, which is very exciting work. Not really, though. And I'm a high school student and also taking classes at the university right now, so.
And in her spare time, she
sleeps as much as possible.
Tell me, well, let's go back a bit to the beginning. I became aware of Gay Straight Alliances just before we did that conference. It sort of surfaced, and then we had Dave Wilson, who's a teacher, came out in his school and he's a big guy. And so I became aware about that time. Now, let's talk about Gay Straight Alliances here in Missoula.
Yeah, we have 2 here in Missoula. The one at Hellgate was founded my freshman year, so just about 2 years ago right now. And it was the first in town. And then last year, Big Sky formed a Gay Straight Alliance after 3 of their students came out in Outspoken, and David Wilson came out, and they felt like they wanted to and needed to form a group there, so they have.
I would like to stress right here that it is a gay straight alliance, and I think that's great. I mean, I think, and I work for a world in which gay and straight don't have to identify themselves because nobody picks on them. So, it'd be like the Sons of Norway, kind of honorary thing that'll pass away. But anyway, so there are a lot of straight people in the Gay Straight Alliance, and I'm not going to ask you to identify yourself either way because, well, for various reasons. You can tell me some of the reasons why you think that's important.
I think, like you said, what we're going for is a world where you don't have to identify. It's not a matter of everyday necessity or whatever, it's about who you fall in love with or who you date. So it's not really something like you wake up in the morning and you feel the need to tell everybody you're straight. Like, we don't do that, so why should gay people have to wake up in the morning and tell everybody they're gay, which is the way it works now, or be so afraid to tell people that you let people just assume that you are straight. And I think that's one of the really great things about our group is we don't ever ask, for people to identify. If people want to identify, that's fine and that's good, and we support them in that, but we don't ever ask. It's not an issue for us. We're not about what every individual is, we're about making it safe for every individual. So
that's terrific.
Mm-hmm.
I might also add that from the standpoint of age, people often shift lines, and I think it's important also to build a kind of world where people can shift, where if you find someone that's not in your official sexual orientation, but you love them and are attracted to them, you should be able to go there. Also, by having a gay-straight alliance, it sort of protects some of the gay people, don't you think?
I think that's a part of it, especially at this stage and where we are as a movement, as a queer rights movement. And I think it's an amazing way to involve so-called allies. We tack that A on the end of GLBTQ and then A, and say allies, but there aren't a lot of organizations really using allies effectively, straight allies to gay people.
Yes, and one of my big causes, but you go ahead.
Yeah, and so I think, if, as young people, especially who are going to, inherit the world or be in charge sometime soon, I think if we can train everybody, and not just on this issue, to be allies for each other, that's such a help in the long run,
Well, I helped form a group here called GAST, which was Gay and Straight Together, and it was such a strange group that though we don't have meetings, it's still in existence because that's the way we defined it. But one of my favorite people and a great friend is a grandmother from down the valley who has a gay daughter. Because she's a long-term resident of the valley, has done a lot. When she speaks, people listen. I think that's a good point. But I want to go back to this thing of protection, is that I've read that in some places, members of the football team will join the Gay-Straight Alliance because they like somebody or they want, so that, if someone is a little bit afraid and they're gay and don't want to be identified, they can go to join, and not have to identify themselves. I heard something about safe rooms in the schools. Now, do you have something like that there?
We don't all the time. We usually try and set up safe rooms for the Day of Silence, in case participants who are taking a vow of silence are getting harassed. They have somewhere they can go and not have to be harassed at that moment, just because it's such a personal event anyway to take this vow of silence and then to be attacked on it. We have, luckily, at Hellgate, a very good counseling staff. And so I would consider any of the counselors' offices safe rooms in effect, but we don't have official safe rooms all the time.
Is there a lot of harassment that goes on?
There's not a whole lot of physical harassment going on, but there's a lot of verbal harassment going on. And of course, some of it is not harassment that's directed right at individuals. There's the language issue, fag, dyke, queer, that's so gay. Those are all kind of buzzwords in our culture right now. People say them without thinking what it means, but I think for somebody on the other side of that, even if it's said, the intent of what's being said is not to be cruel or to harass somebody, it does end up feeling like that. And just being on the kind of the side where I'm looking at it from the perspective of being inclusive of all people, that really is harassment. So
I was watching something on TV last night with a guy who'd written a new book on Hitler, and talked about that in some ways Hitler was not exceptional at all in being anti-Semitic, that there were lots of people who had said and did the same things. It was just he was sort of jumped on the bandwagon. And the fact that he could jump on the bandwagon because it was there, and that kind of sentiment and that kind of talk. And I think that's also, when people say, oh, it's just words, I'm not big on political correctness, but I think that an atmosphere in which people can get away with that kind of talk. Let's switch to something else. You use the word queer. Let's talk about using those words. I have a great friend who kind of got me into that. You know, if you can use the words faggot and, I don't know, I'm going to think, no, I'm not going to use the word I'm thinking of, but if you can use those words about yourself, it takes a lot of the pain away. That was, you're the guest now. Okay. Thoughts on that?
I like the word queer. I use it a lot. The queer community, queer activism. You know, first because I think the word queer is inclusive, and I don't have to rattle off this long set of initials and all of that. But second, because it reclaims something that has been used against the community for such a long time. And so I think there is something to that idea of taking it back and making it your own and defying the power of that word, or taking away the power. And we can see that happening with a lot of different communities and a lot of different words, you know, women reclaiming cunt, or, you know.
That was in that class of words I was not going to use. I'm going to use that word. One Halloween, I got dressed up and at the Crystal Theater, and someone wanted me to come down to the Lambda dance, and I went in costume, and I decided I was going to the Oxford because I had worked there and I had friends there, and I was walking on the street, and some people on the street said, "Cocksucker," and I just turned and said, "Yeah," you know, and it didn't bother me, and in fact, it kind of gave me a warm feeling to be able to accept that word and use it and not be hurt by it. Which is why we're using both those words, because, not to shock anyone in our audience, but to give examples of the kind of thing that we're talking about. And you're right about the queer. There is a need for some word that's inclusive. I like gay myself. I've been big about trying to build a community that includes women, so we had gay and lesbian, and then all of a sudden we had to have transgendered, and then bisexual, and it's not that I'm against that, I just think verbally it's a lot of, and when you start writing and every time you refer to the movement, if you got to do all that, so I usually stick just to gay. And queer, that's a nice one. Let's get more mundane. We're getting to the Gay Straight Alliance, what does it do? How often does it meet? What kind of projects have you had?
We meet.
I'm going to stick something in there just before you go, and then I'm going to let you talk a lot. The local HIV planning group gave you, which I was thrilled about, $500 to do with As You Chose, which was something we wanted to do so that, you know, it would be your thing. Okay, so we'll put that in there, and then you can kind of weave all that together. When you meet, what you do, how you use the $500.
Okay. Well, we meet once a week, and we've always met Fridays at lunch. For us, we just always have for the 2 years we've been a group. And gosh, we do a lot of stuff, it seems like, these days. We have a couple annual events. We do the National Day of Silence, which we just did. It was April 4th this year. And we do World AIDS Day. We pass out condoms and ribbons and do a little bit of peer education. And then we always try and at least acknowledge National Coming Out Day. It's a hard one to do an event on or for in a high school, so we're kind of figuring that one out still. And then we do a lot of other stuff. We're kind of working on publicity a lot right now. And then with the $500, our biggest project with that is going to be to start a zine. We just picked a name. It's going to be Regenbogen, which is rainbow in German. And it's writing from several members of the group, and then we might pick up a few national stories and put it in and have that to pass out to people. And we're also going to work on getting members of our group to Pride Weekend this year with the money. So, did I miss anything?
we could drop the hint to Pride that they could find people to put those kinds of scholarships out there. I think that gives a pretty good idea of this sort of thing. Do you have a faculty sponsor?
We do. All groups on campus have to have an advisor, and we have an amazing advisor. We're really lucky. Greg Kastl, who is an English teacher at Hellgate, he's been on board since the beginning and is so energetic and so excited to bring what we're doing to the faculty and keep everybody excited on the faculty for us. And so.
Didn't there used to be a woman?
Let's see.
I was thinking I've made contact through you with.
Lynn Carlisle, one of the counselors at school, has been really active. She's not our official advisor, but she's been very active with us. So.
We talked about the local sort of history of yours, but we were talking earlier, and I want to get this story in because I'd never heard of it until you and I were just talking sort of in the warm-up. Let's talk about the Gay Straight Alliance movement nationally, if there is such a thing.
Yeah, let's see, I think Gay Straight Alliances really started in the late 80s, and there weren't very many of them. And then in the late 90s, there was the El Modena versus Orange Unified School District court case.
As I said, I've never heard this. This is one word, El Modena, and that's a person?
It's a school. It's a high school.
It's a school versus?
The Orange County Unified School District.
Okay, now this is fascinating. Go ahead.
And Orange County in California, their school district decided that they wanted to deny Gay Straight Alliance access to a meeting place at the El Modena High School campus. And under the Equal Access Act, if you're allowing other groups to meet, you have to allow all groups to meet, and they were allowing a Christian group to meet among several other groups. But they just vehemently denied the Gay Straight Alliance access to the school. And so the Gay Straight Alliance, the members of the Gay Straight Alliance sued the school district and went through several appeals of verdicts and finally won their court case. And so they're now up and running in El Modena High School in Orange County, California.
Well, now tell me about how this because you told me about how the Equal Access Act came to be.
Well, it was pushed through in the Reagan days by the right wing of the Republican Party, the real conservatives. And it was pushed through so that Christian groups could meet on school campuses, because previously they'd not been allowed to. And it's very ironic that now they're trying, the right wing of the Republican Party is trying to get the Equal Access Act overturned because it's what's allowing gay straight alliances to meet. So,
Hoist on their own petard. I've always wanted to say that out loud. Hoist on their own petard. That is ironic, and it's a wonderful story. And I think it underlines that people your age are not stupid, they're not all juvenile delinquents, that they can be committed and political and do as much as most of the adults even think about doing. How did you get interested in all this?
well, I've really always felt like an activist. I was a very opinionated little child and always
I bet you were.
Always wanted to be, out on the picket line and at rallies, and so I've always been an activist, and that was really kind of key in me getting involved. And then when I was about 12, my parents are divorced, and when I was 12, my dad came out to me, and so that really kind of gave me one cause, this cause in particular, that I knew I really wanted to fight for. And then my freshman year of high school, the Gay Straight Alliance was founded, and I had become friends with the founder a month or so before the Gay Straight Alliance started meeting, and he is just an amazing, charismatic guy, and I just knew that that was where I wanted to be involved. So
there's a lot of activism running around in your family. Your uncle and I are very good friends, and he's involved with the health department, and he and I are co-chairs for the regional advisory committee, and and he's a tremendous man. I like him very much.
You too.
You do. You're on go. Okay. Let's see, what other... I'm running out of questions. Anything you want to say?
Oh, goodness.
Well, let's talk
There's
about...
so many ways that could go.
Okay, well, I could think of one, but if you've got one in particular
no.
off the top of your head. No, please.
I don't have one in particular.
Want to ask me a question? No? Okay, I did want to talk about this intergenerational. These buzzwords have become fashionable. It hasn't gone very far, but the idea that what you and I are doing right here should be done more, that people should reach across age barriers. And we were talking, and I tell this story often, a friend of mine said that when he hit 50, he discovered a really interesting trick. You know, he could be invisible. You and I were talking earlier that there's this cutoff date at 50, especially for gay men, and then, you know, what is it, 18, over 18, you're legal for sex, and that there's this kind of middle ground where it's, I don't know. What your thoughts on intergenerational contact?
Well, kind of one of the other causes that I'm big on working on is ending adultism, which is really goes hand in hand with ending all ageism. And I think we lose so many people in this race to be 20-somethings all our lives. You know, I see so many of my peers trying to be older than they really are, you know, and, you know, dress older, act older, be older so that they get into bars or whatever, or just so that they get along in a more fun part of life, I guess. And then to watch, like, people in their 30s, 40s, trying to be 20, you know. I just think we lose so much of, you know, so many different people are so many different things at different ages in their lives. And I am totally loving being 17, you know, and want to be, you know, that's integral to who I am right now, you know, just as being 50 is integral to who you are, I'm sure, because it's a different experience. You know, every age that we move through is a different experience, and if we would stop marginalizing people, it would be good.
Well, and there's something really, and you hit on it, something even more basic than that, and that's about being happy with what you are and who you are, and age is a part of that. And if you're older and yearning to be 21, and if you're younger and yearning to be 21, there are a lot of people missing out there, you know, because it's only the ones who are 21 that, you know, have really got it. And there is a richness. I have, in the last few years, and even more recently than that, really enjoyed being whatever age I am. Every year when I have a birthday, I, you know, do the math and figure it out, and then I forget it for the rest of the year. So I'm 54, 55, somewhere in there. I've always, Jane Austen is one of my favorite writers, and I've always thought if we could build a gay society that was a lot like a Jane Austen novel or a Jane Austen party, where old people came and young people came, and the young people, once in a while, the gentleman would come over, would be nice and ask an old lady to dance. And the old people were quite confident because they had money, and they, you know, and the young people, that there was a place for the different ages, and where people could really mix, rather than this thing of separating into groups. Now, some of that is inevitable, and some of it's desirable. I mean, God knows you wouldn't want to take me to one of your parties. And there are parties I go to where, well, no, that's not true, because I take a lot of young people to whatever I do. Here's a topic that I want to bring up, and that is pedophilia. And that's adults, and of course you know who chase younger people. It's an affliction, if you want to call it that, that is more across sexual preference barriers than it is. I mean, pedophiliacs usually go after girls or boys, and it is a problem in society. Now, I could just ask, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, here we're talking.
Thoughts on pedophilia.
Well, here we are talking about intergenerational stuff, and and you're 17 and I'm 50-something. You know, I reach out, I touch you. And that causes a lot of people fear. Not just right-wing people, but liberal, good-thinking people, and for reasons, because it does happen. Well, first I'll ask you your thoughts and see where we go from there.
Well, I think the important thing to remember about that is it isn't just one type of people, although, you know, the FBI says that something like 92% of pedophiliacs are straight men, straight white men. So, you know,
Those guys
kind of
are responsible for all the trouble in the world, those straight white guys. Okay.
But, you know, I think young people are smart enough to know their boundaries, and older people are smart enough to, or should be smart enough to know boundaries also, and often are. And I've never run into it as an issue in any of my dealings, and I run, you know, I'm in a lot of crowds where it is intergenerational. And I just, you know, I think if we would trust young people to know their boundaries, it wouldn't be such a huge thing. And it's a lot of, I don't know where to go beyond that. But
we should trust. I was thinking about that. I can't imagine any adult taking advantage of you unless it were physically. You're a pretty sharp young lady. I had one more, and all of a sudden it slipped my head that I wanted to talk about. It couldn't have been too important. Michael, this has been a delight. It really is. And I said,
Yeah.
I usually end with a handshake or a hug, depending how the interview goes. So today, I think you deserve a hug. How about?
thank you.
Okay, thank you for coming.